Okay, so we're going to start with 9.1, which was circles and parabolas. Okay, remember the standard form of a circle is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. Your center is hk, and your radius is r. So there was really only like 2 types of questions, well 3, that we did in this section, which was here's some information about a circle, you give me the equation, where I could give you like the center and a coordinate point or the intercept, something like that. And then the reverse of that, where you were given an equation that was not in standard form, you had to complete the square to get it into standard form. From there, you had to identify the center, the radius, and the graph it. You're only going to get one complete the square problem on your test, and it could be any of the 4 conics. So it could be a circle, it could be a parabola, it could be ellipse, or it could be a hyperbola. So you're only going to get one. Like I said, keep that in mind. You're not going to have to keep completing the square 700 times, otherwise you'll, again, never finish a test. But it could be from the circle section, it could be parabola, it could be the ellipse or the hyperbola. So if complete the square is where you're lacking, then my recommendation would be to make sure that you review that part. Okay, but that's really, the circles was the easy part in my opinion. Okay, again, you're either getting an equation and graphing it, identifying the radius and the center, or you're getting information about your circle and you're giving me the equation. Then came the parabola. So there's 2 different types of parabolas when they're not in function form, and that is horizontal or vertical. If it's horizontal, this means this opens to the right or it opens to the left. If it opens to the right, then it's a positive 4p. So this would be a y minus k squared equals positive 4px minus h. And if it was horizontal, and pointing to the left, it's just a negative 4p. Everything else is the same. So for these, you'll find the vertex, the focus, and the directrix. Remember that the directrix and the focus are both p distance away from your parabola, from your vertex. So if I had drawn a parabola and I knew that the vertex was at 1, 2, let's say, and it was a positive 4p, so it faces to the right, and my p was 2, then I'm going to go to the right 2 to find the focus, and I'm going to go to left 2 to find the directrix. So this parabola would have, again, it's a positive y squared. It would have so this coordinate point is 1, 2. This would be y minus 2 squared equals a positive 4p, so 4 times 2, x minus 1. This would be y minus 2 squared equals 8, x minus 1. That would be the equation of this parabola. So just like with the circle, you're either going to get an equation and have to find information about it, or you're going to get the graph, and then, or you're going to get the information and you're going to have to give me the equation. If it's vertical, it either opens upward or downward. If it's upward, then this is an x minus h squared equals a positive 4py minus k. And if it was vertical and pointing down, it's x minus h squared equals negative 4p y minus k. And same rules apply. The vertex is p distance away from the focus and the directrix. And remember that the vertex and the focus are both points, but the directrix is a line. So this is going to be an x equals or a y equals answer. So this kind of question, you'll get part of it on Canvas and then you'll write the rest of it. So anything that's graphed, you're going to graph on your answer sheet. I'll try to post that answer sheet today. Keep forgetting to make it, but I'll post that answer sheet because you're definitely going to have the graphs printed, and then I'll post the other one for Monday. That's going to be different, but anything that's going to have a graph, you're going to graph on your answer sheet.
So unless we find it, because it repeats, we just count it.
Yep.
But are you going to give us like the vertex and like the focus, or just the vertex and the directrix, or do we
It'll be two of those three.
Okay.
Yep. So I don't know if you guys heard her from home, but she said, will you give us like the vertex and the directrix, the vertex and the focus, and the answers? You'll get two of those three, vertex, directrix, or focus, and then you'll have to go from there.
That'd be pretty salty if you just give us the focus and the directrix.
Oh, that could happen. That could definitely happen. Okay. What would you do if I gave you that?
Be like that.
The midpoint, right, or halfway. So either count it on your graph or find the midpoint between them. But yes, that could definitely happen.
Yeah, but you would do an odd number.
That could also definitely happen. Yeah, but it wouldn't be that bad. You just got to divide by 2. It's always going to be a 0.5.
It's a 0.5.
Yeah. Any questions on circles and parabolas? Obviously, these are the things you've had the most practice with, but important to review. Okay, then came ellipses. So the standard form of ellipse also has 2 versions, whether it's horizontal or it's vertical. Okay, if it's horizontal, it means it's wider than it is tall. If it's vertical, it's taller than it is wide. So first of all, it would look something like this. It would be wider than it is tall if it's horizontal. And that's determined by where the a is. So this is an x minus h squared over a squared plus y minus k squared over b squared equals 1. And vertical would be taller than it is wide. And it's a y minus k squared over a squared plus x minus h squared over b squared equals 1. The important thing, though, is not the order of the a and the b and the x and the y, but that a is the larger number. So remember, that's a big difference between the ellipses and the hyperbolas. In a hyperbola, a is always first. In an ellipse, a is always larger. Okay, for these, the center for both is hk. The a is the distance from the center to the vertices, which would be on the major axis. The b is from the center to the co-vertices. And the c is the center to the foci. Both a and c are on the major axis. And b is on the minor axis. C squared equals a squared minus b squared for an ellipse. You're going to have to be able to find your vertices, your co-vertices, your foci, and I took off eccentricity. The major axis is 2a, and the minor axis is 2b. So just like with the parabolas, 2 different types of questions with ellipses. You're either going to get the equation, and it's going to ask you to identify the center, the vertices, the co-vertices, the foci, and graph it. So this is a big one. I can't remember how many points I put on it, but it's a good amount of points on something like this because that's multiple parts. Or you're going to get given information about it, and you're going to get given information about it and you're going to have to find the equation. So we'll come back and do an example on ellipses and hyperbolas when I get through the hyperbolas. But questions on that?
So no eccentricity.
Yeah, I didn't even put on that test. That's just C over A. Nobody ever uses it to help you out, so what's the point, right? I mean, remember, it tells you how oval it should be, right? How flat it should be. Nobody ever remembers that, so like, what's the point? Yeah. All right, then came hyperbolas, and the last page is rotations. That's what we're going to say for tomorrow, okay? But the standard form of the hyperbola, again, has two different kinds, horizontal and vertical. If it's horizontal, then your branches open outward. So let's say you have something like this. Your branches would open to the right and to the left. And for this equation, remember, order is important. The x has to come first. For vertical, it's the reverse. So again, different from ellipse, the A is first this time. So with an ellipse, A is larger. With a hyperbola, A is first. A is the same this time. Well, let's start with the center. Center is HK. This time they call it the major axis. Is the same thing as transverse to A. And the minor axis they call the conjugate axis. Is 2B. So that's the same as your ellipses. A is the same center to vertex or vertices because there's two of them. B center to co-vertices. C center to foci. And C squared equals A squared plus B squared with a hyperbola. It's the opposite of your equation. So your equation for a hyperbola has a minus between them, but the C squared is A squared plus B squared. Ellipse, your equation has a plus, but the C squared equals A squared minus B squared. You're going to have to find the vertices, the co-vertices, the foci. This time we've got asymptotes. So on the asymptote for the horizontal, it's y equals k plus and minus. Horizontal is b over a, x minus h. And it's y equals k plus and minus a over b, x minus h for the vertical. So the difference there is, again, horizontal is b over a and vertical is a over b. And again, I took off eccentricity, so don't worry about it. So also two different kinds of questions with the hyperbolas. You're either going to get, or you're going to get both. Here's the equation. Give me the center, the vertices, the co-vertices, the foci, the asymptotes, and then graph it. And again, that one's got a good chunk of points on it because there's multiple parts. And then the reverse, where here's information about my hyperbola, find the equation. And then again, remember you'll get one complete the square, which could be the circle, the parabola, the ellipse, or the hyperbola. So that question will literally say, use complete the square to put the equation in standard form. And then if it is a circle, give me the radius and the center. If it's B, a parabola, give me the vertex, the directrix, and the foci. If it is C, an ellipse, give me the center, like all those things, and then D, a hyperbola. So depending on what your equation is, once you complete the square, will determine what information you have to give about that conic. Questions where we're at so far? So that's everything we learned up till the break. Again, we're going to add the rotation on tomorrow. We're going to add the classification on in just a minute, but I do want to do two quick examples of the ellipse and the hyperbola. All right, so we're just going to do the graphs of them. We're not going to do the reverse with the equation. Tonight, I have a practice test that's some of it's multiple choice, some of it's open-ended, but it's going to ask you to do both sides. It'll ask you to graph it, and it will ask you to find the equation. So you do as much or as little as you need to do in order to know what you're doing before we move on. All right, so this says x minus 6 squared over 4 plus y plus 2 squared over 25 equals 1. First of all, what kind of conic is this? It's an ellipse, and you know that because it's a plus, right? It's a plus in between and also not the same number on the bottom. If it was the same number on the bottom, then it's a circle, because an ellipse with the same A and B, right, is a circle. So with an ellipse, think of all the things you have to know about an ellipse. I need to know, is it horizontal or vertical? Which one?
This is horizontal.
Ooh, so close. 50-50 shot. Go with the other one.
It's vertical.
It's vertical. Why is it vertical, though?
Because A is under the Y.
Good. The larger number is under the Y. So the A squared is 25, which makes A 5. The B squared is 4, which makes B 2. What other piece of information that's really important is they're glaring to you from the tops of those fractions? The center. Good. Center is 6, -2. Always the opposite of what's there. So think about what you can start to do already. I'm pulling a graph. My center is 6, -2, so I can plot that point. It's vertical, so I'm going to go up and down the A, which is 5. And I'm going to go right and left the B, which was 2. Then I'm going to list all those important things that I just wrote out, because it's going to leave like you're going to have a blank that says, it's going to say center, and you're going to write that. And then it's going to say vertices. So this is my top and bottom points here, which are 6, 3, 6, -7. It's going to say co-vertices, which are my B points. I went right and left that 2, so 4, -2, and 8, -2. It's going to say foci, and for that we need our C. So C squared equals A squared minus B squared for an ellipse. 25 minus 4, C squared would equal 21, square root of 21. If that number could be simplified, it needs to be, but this one cannot, so it stays that way. If I'm going to put it on my graph, I'm going to approximate that to be like a 4.5. So from the center up, 1, 2, 3, 4.5. From the center down, 1, 2, 3, 4.5. That would be my foci. And because it's vertical, I went up and down the C. So that's the y. So the x doesn't change, the x stays as 6. And then I go -2 plus square root 21 and -2 minus square root 21. Now I don't mind if you write that as plus and minus. So if I give you the line and it says, give me the foci, and you want to write -2 plus and minus square root 21, that's totally fine. Questions on the ellipse?
Can you leave it there?
Sure. All right, so notice the only thing I changed on this one is the minus in between, which makes this now a what? Hyperbola. All right, tell me what you know just from the equation. So x minus 6 squared over 4 minus y plus 2 squared over 25 equals 1. Tell me what you know already. A squared is 4, because it's first, right? So A is 2.
B is 5 and B squared.
Good. B squared is 25. B is 5. Maria, what were you going to say?
Center is 6, -2.
Good. Center is 6, -2. What else do we know because of the location of the A and the B, or the location of the numbers? I mean the letters. X and Y. Vertical or horizontal? Other one. Horizontal. Horizontal. Because the X is first. Now I bring in the graph again. Center, 6, -2. Horizontal, so I go right and left the A, which was 2, up and down the B, which was 5. So from here, obviously I know my center. I already know my vertices. That's my right and left. So I went right and left the 2, which makes it 8, -2, and 4, -2. And my co-vertices, up and down 5. So the x stays the same. The x is going to stay 6, but I went up 5 to get to 3. And I went down 5 to get to -7. Then comes my little box. Again, you could use the actual asymptotes to be graphed, or you could use the box. I would recommend the box because I think it's a little bit easier than having to get this, especially if it's off center. And we said it's horizontal, so it's coming off of these vertices as wide without touching those asymptotes as I can get. So asymptotes. Y equals my K, which is -2, plus and minus. It's horizontal, so it's B over A, 5 over 2, X minus H, which is 6. And you can leave them just like that. So like on the line where it says asymptotes, leave it just like that. Make your life easier. If you had extra time and you wanted to go back and put that into slope-intercept form and then see if your lines match up to the asymptotes that are there, feel free. But don't waste your time doing that before you finish. Okay, then the last thing we have to find with this one is the foci. So c squared equals a squared plus b squared this time. C squared would equal 20 or 4 plus 25. Which means c is the square root of 29. If I'm going to graph that, I'm going to approximate it. Again, it's kind of in between 5 and 6. I'm going to approximate it to be like, I don't know, 5.5, 5.4. It doesn't really matter because you're not going to get any more accurate than that. So from the center, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, my foci is over here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 over here.
So when we're doing the asymptotes, we don't have to like fully simplify it by multiplying it the 5/2.
Correct. You just want to make sure that your slope is simplified. So like if 5/2 could be reduced, you need to do that. But you don't need to distribute the 5/2. All right, so then this last thing is my foci. I went right and left because, again, that's my major axis. I went right and left the C. So my x, which is 6, gets a plus and minus the square root of 29. You can separate it out, or you could keep it all in one line like that. That's fine. Just make sure you don't forget the plus and the minus. Yep.
So for the asymptotes in the test, we can put plus minus.
Sure.
Okay.
Yep. So if it was like multiple choice, you'd probably see it separated out. But if it's open-ended, which is what it is, you're going to put that on your answer sheet so you can leave it just the way it is. Questions on any of that stuff? So this is the way to determine what kind of conic you have while it's still in general form. So there are two different types of form, general and standard. In standard form, you're going to have, you already completed the squares. You're going to get x is squared and not an x. You're going to get a y squared maybe, but not a y. If it's in parentheses, you get the x minus h, the y minus k, all that good stuff. If it's in standard form, you're looking to see, is there a plus between the two fractions because then it's an ellipse? Is there a minus between the two fractions because then it's a hyperbola? Is there only one term squared because then it's a parabola? Are both the denominators the same, which would make it a circle, okay? When it's in general form, so it's written out in this big long line, doesn't necessarily have to be a big long line, but it would have an x squared and an x and a y squared and a y, then this is what you're looking for. Does a, which is a is in front of the x squared, equal c, and c is what's in front of the y squared. So from that big long equation, you literally just want to look at the a and the c's, the x squared and the y squared. If they are the same number, then it is a circle. If their product is 0, meaning one is missing, then it's a parabola. If their product is greater than 1, then it's an ellipse. Greater than 0, then, which means it's positive, then it's an ellipse. And if the product is less than 0, meaning it's negative, then it's a hyperbola. So it's literally going to give you your big long equation, and then it's going to say classify it as a circle, a parabola, ellipse, or hyperbola. And they would look something like this. So again, you want to find the a, which is on front of the x squared, and the c, which is in the front of the y squared, and then figure out from there which of those classifications it falls in. So if I look at a, like example a, what is the a? 4. What's the c?
0.
0. There is no y squared, right? So what happens when I multiply 4 times 0? It's 0, which makes this a parabola.
Wait, why isn't it y squared?
Because there is no y squared, so which means it would have a coefficient of 0. If it was just y squared, then it'd be 1. Right? There's no, look in this whole thing, there's no y squareds, which means it would be 0 y squared. Go to B. What is your A? 4. What is your C? -1. First of all, they're not the same. That's why obviously the first thing I would check because that makes a circle. What happens when I multiply these together? It's a negative number, which makes this? Hyperbola. Good. Go to C. What is your A? 2. What is your C? 4. Are they the same? No. What is the result of their product? 8. Positive, yes? Which means ellipse. And last one. What is your A? 2. What is your C? 2. What does that make this? Circle. So be careful because their product is positive, right? But it's because they're the same that it's a circle. If you think about it, an ellipse that had the same radius in both directions, the same major and minor axis, an ellipse, that would be a circle. Easy stuff, right? Yes? Okay. So tonight I would say you kind of have two options. If you have no work on your project, Lord help you, you need to do that. Okay? Option 1, project. Because that is due day after tomorrow. And remember, tomorrow night I'm not helping you. So tomorrow's the last day for questions. Option 2, the better option, is you've already done a lot, or if not all of your project, because there have been some submitted, and you could do the practice test. That's from 9-1 to 9-3. Tomorrow we are going to do rotation of conic, and you're going to have homework on the rotation of the conic. So if you do not have a good chunk of your project done, you need to do that tonight. That needs to be the first thing you do, because you won't have the opportunity to do a lot of that tomorrow. If you're mostly done with your project and you want to do that practice test tonight, that'd be great. But the practice test is non-graded. It's obviously important because you have a test on Friday. But you do that when you have time this week. Your project has to be due Wednesday morning. So that is your first priority. Any questions for me as far as projects that may have come up over the break? I think I got a question in this one about the template because somebody wasn't here before the break. But other than that, not that I didn't miss you guys, but it was crickets on my email and I kind of liked it. Yeah.
If you did a video for the interview questions, do you still need a works cited page?
So yes, because you still have sources. You should still, your interviewer is still a source. Your financial, remember you should still have, and on the bottom of the assignment, I put it right there, what the sources need to be, okay? Your interviewer, at minimum, the person you interviewed, not interviewer, interviewee, the financial information from your university, the course description from their university, and the 8-semester track from your university. So at minimum, 4 sources. If you went further into apartments or anything like that, then you have more. But at minimum, you need those 4.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You just don't have to type out your question and answers. That's the difference.
Ms. Chris,
Yep.
was it okay if I